Hello everyone, Raleigh Mason again, Mejaro Inspection Services. Today we're taking a look at Scott as he opens up a septic tank because we do now inspect septic systems as part of our services. Okay, so let's take a look at a septic system that we might find in our area. So in this case, you've got a septic tank. You've got your household water, as it shows there, the wastewater flowing in what you call an inlet pipe into that septic tank. Usually there's a riser or at least an access hole, hopefully on the inlet side, hopefully over both actually. Usually we'll find it on the inlet side. It runs through usually a chamber. So you've got a couple baffles. You've got an interior baffle that keeps solids at the bottom, scum layer at the top, and then the effluent or liquid sewage that will settle out of the ground in the drain field that moves all the way out through that distribution box. Scott's still working on getting that lid off the riser here. A lot of screws. Now here's an example of a reason why a septic system may fail. This is a picture of the riser lid that's been taken off, and you can see water, effluent is just sitting on the top, some scum there too. So this tank is flooded. We've had an issue, and this thing has got to be reviewed. That's a failure. We would have to call the health department for that. Still working on those screws, Scott. All right, so here's another example of something to look out for if you have a septic system. That's a sludge field out in over the drain field, or just a lot of standing water. That's another indicator of a failed septic system, in particular your drain field. Once Scott gets all these screws out, we'll take a look inside. All right, so here's another example of not quite what you would see in the septic tanks that we have in the area, but this is a shot of a baffle that's failed. You'll usually have an inlet baffle or a T that diverts the liquid down into the tanks. Now let's talk about the process on the whole for what we do when we inspect a septic system. First thing we do is go into the house and drop dye tablets into that wastewater so that once we're done with the home inspection and we finish with the septic portion, we'll go outside, open up the lid. In this case, like you see Scott trying to do here, eventually he will get that open. You'll take a look inside the tank and to see if you have any dye that's floating in there. It's also part of the test when we go out later and probe the drain field to see if we have any of that, any liquid that comes up, especially if it's a dark liquid or the neon green, like the dye we put into the system. The other things we look for, again, low areas in the soil, any recent modifications or excavation is a good indicator of some issues perhaps, or something they've had to fix, right? Any evidence of effluent, again, whether it's above the tank, above the septic field, the drain field. We also look, in this case, the septic tank covers. So they've got a riser, that's the green tube you see coming out of the ground. And they've got a square hole, and they've got another plug that sits on top. You can see that Scott just pulled that, what used to be a metal handle, right off of that lid. It rusted completely off as soon as he pulled it up. That happens a lot. So here we're going to get into trying to get that lid out. We've got some tools that we use with that as well. First thing, of course, get out the gloves. Got to be sure we're safe and not messing around with any of that nastiness, right? So you'll have things like we have the tarp we lay out. We got gloves to put on, shovels, pry bars, all these things. So in this case, Scott's going to try to work that lid out. And this one took quite a while, actually. So this one was a square hole with a rounded plug to a degree. But as you can see here, just over time, the ground kind of goes down below and wedges the lid in there. So in this case, we've had to, you'll see we use a shovel all over trying to wedge that up, because you never have a good idea of how wedged it may be in, or if it's going to break apart on you. In this case, this particular lid is open on the corner there. That's why we're putting the shovel in there, try to wedge that out. Again, the reason we've got to open this up is to take a look inside, see if we notice any dye, and then we measure things like the scum layer on top. We measure the sludge level at the bottom, and then we also measure the actual amount of liquids in the tank. That gives us an overall formula or degree of health for a septic system. Now, sometimes, depending on the way the system's set up, it may have been pumped recently, which means the dye is not great. It's not going to help much if it's been pumped, but maybe then we can see more of the tank. We especially need to see the baffles if we can. There's an inlet baffle, comes from the house, and then there's an outlet baffle that goes out to the drain field. Those are things we try to look at as well. Here you go. So just reiterate, we add a dye to the system. We got to review the tank area and the drain field, make sure there's no sludge or standing water. And see now we're getting the pry bar in there to see if we can dig that lid out. So we review lids to make sure that they are in fact safe. You should have a lid that is not going to allow anyone to fall in. We got to review baffles and review the tank if we can. Usually in our case, we're not going to be able to see much of the tank unless it's pumped, because you just got too much water liquid in there. And once we're into the tank and looking around at things, some other things we got to do. Again, measure the scum layer, measure that sludge level, the tank depth as far as liquids. And then we go into the house and turn on the kitchen faucet, dishwasher, and then the washing machine as well, separately, to make sure they are all discharging into the septic tank. Last thing you want is for those things separately to be discharging somewhere else, tied into some other system. So there we go. Finally got this thing open. So now you're seeing into the inside. We've already inspected it and found that there was no baffle on the inlet side. We also don't see any dye. So in this case, we've got some issues on this particular one. One, again, missing an inlet baffle or a T. So that's going to go in the report. It's got to be looked at. Here's a good review of a tank in some words that we're using here. So you can see the baffles on the left and right. And then in this case, we also don't have any scum layer. So you should have a scum layer, the effluent, and then sludge. That's an indicator of a system that's working well. In this tank, we don't have a scum layer or an inlet baffle. So these are the things we're going to call out. Here in a minute, Scott's going to check the sludge level, though. The depth. So we use various tools to do that. In this case, we're going to stick this long stick we have in there and let it sit for a few minutes. I've cut the video down to just show a portion of that. The things we also check when we're inside the tank or have that lid open is make sure the level of waste in the tank isn't too high. The effluent, because that may mean the drain field or outlet is blocked. You don't want a low level of effluent or liquids in the tank because you may have a leak. So it's very important to know if they've had the system pumped recently or not. So lastly, what we're going to be doing, going out to the drain field, probing that. I don't have video to show you that. It's just a simple inserting a rod into the drain field and probing those perforated tiles to make sure nothing comes up that shouldn't be there. So again, very excited to announce we inspect septic systems. Give us a call. We hope to take care of your needs with every inspection we perform. Thanks so much. Have a great day.